Hello, everyone. Today I have Brian Colburn with me and we are going to be talking about all sorts of things. So he's mainly in the podcasting world, does a bit of coaching around that world as well, and we're going to hear more about it and his journey to get there. He's been doing this for quite a while. And of course, goals and visions going forward. Here, there might be a podcast being revamped with someone, which is quite exciting, and advice for entrepreneurs that are looking to get into this podcasting world. I know a lot of entrepreneurs use it as a way to get their social media out there into the world because you can use it on all different platforms. You can create shorts out of it. You can have YouTube. So it's a really fun way to have one recording that goes out to many different spaces. So we'll go into a bit about that. And at the end, he's going to ask me a question, as always. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to turn it over to Brian to tell us a bit about what he does.
Well, thank you first and foremost for having me on the show, Megan. I greatly appreciate it. And you nailed it on the head. I run a podcast production company. There's a team behind me. We're all here in the U.S. to include two disabled veterans who are independent contractors. I do my best to give back to the veteran community. We help people tell their story, and that's our mission. We find the value in story, and we just want to help be that conduit to get those stories out to the world. In addition to that, I've fallen into coaching, mentoring, and educating a lot of people on the power of podcasting and how to do it effectively and efficiently. And again, like you stated, repurpose that long form content into shorts and multiple pieces of social media to increase their presence, grow their show, and really help solidify themselves as a brand.
And I like how you said that it's storytelling, because sometimes we get into it's information telling, but it's also just storytelling. There's great power in stories. I did a story workshop on the weekend, and being able to tell something that we don't normally have a space to go into, and this creates a space for some fun stuff to come out.
Absolutely. You know, the difference between information telling and storytelling is, do you want to be remembered? You know, I was just listening to a podcast, and how many times have you looked back at those PowerPoint presentations that you've sat through and went, oh, I really wish I had that slide deck? Never. You know, I mean, we request the slide decks after a presentation so we can review it, and it eventually works its way into the trash can because we don't find the time to review it. But how many TED Talks have you listened to that you can remember? Remember the premise, remember that story that was told. And I think that as we develop business information into story, that's when the power really shines through and we become more memorable and our story gets shared much greater across social media.
That's amazing. And where did this idea for story versus just information come from?
You know, trial and error, a lot of education. I consume audio ridiculously. If I open a book to turn a page and read, I fall asleep. I've even tried ebooks and I go to sleep. But when it's in my ear and I'm immersed into a great story, it's my wife will read a book and she'll react to what she's reading because of the story that's going on in her mind. And my mind doesn't work that way. I want to hear it. So being an audio learner, I just wanted to help people find their story, craft their story for this medium. I think I answered your question.
Yeah, no, 100%. And in the crafting, what's your process around that? Because that's very unique.
It is. And I'm a huge planner and I'm very mission oriented. And when I have the premise for what I need to get across, say a slide deck, we'll take a slide deck. And I do a lot of PowerPoint presentations and presenting and educating people as well. But I start with, what do I want them to walk away with? And how can I craft these slides and build a story arc into my presentation so they leave with the memory I want them to leave with, not necessarily all the information that's being shared on the slide. It's crafting that story arc and inciting those emotional responses you want from the story you're telling, even though you're flipping through a slide deck. And it's the same way for a podcast. It's the same way for a YouTube video. The great creators tell story.
So that's really, I don't even know how to say this, but how do you teach, like, so if someone was coming into this world of storytelling versus just showing a PowerPoint presentation with information or just doing a podcast where it's based on information, how do you teach that world of storytelling? Because it is a world. There's, like you said, it's thinking about how to create that arc of interest and conclusion and keep it alive throughout the entire production. How do you teach that?
We reflect on, and I'm sure some questions are coming where I'm going to interject a story to help illustrate that point. And it's just that. It's having these anecdotes in your file cabinet upstairs and having these short stories in your file cabinet upstairs and being able to recognize I can pull this story, interject here, and help get the point across or help to better illustrate an answer to that question. And, this is where I'm going to get geeky. Going back to planning, I maintain a database of story. I intentionally work on story every single week. And I break it down to what am I struggling with right now? Say it's sales. My closing rate has been declining. Let's take a look at what I'm doing. I know what I want the outcome to be. How can I, or what story can I interject to help them, the customer or potential customer, walk away thinking Brian's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and he's the guy to help me communicate my story to the world in the manner in which I want. But it comes with, and I'm not the end all be all by no means. I will send podcasters to a storytelling coach if needed. And there are several that I work with. I will send potential podcasters to improv training. And those two worlds, when we bring the skills learned back into the podcasting world, the performance, the story, the content is just so improved. And it's noticeable from one episode to the next. And back to that planning phase, when we're conceptualizing what we're going to talk about this week on podcast ABC, what do we want the listener to walk away with? And if we start with that in mind, like I've said, we can craft that story arc to help them walk away with the experience we want them to walk away from.
So that kind of leads into you telling us a bit about your podcast and because everyone does podcasting slightly differently. You're talking a lot about story and what you want people to get out of it. What sort of podcasts do you create?
I had the fortunate pleasure to work with, and here's a funny story. I was chasing this company because I wanted to sell them ad space on a podcast we were producing. And I open up LinkedIn. I find the decision makers in the marketing department and the creative department. I connect with them. I engage with them over time. We finally get to a point to where we're sitting down in person having a cup of coffee. And I pitch. And he goes, "That's really funny. I wanted to meet with you because we want to start our own show." And awesome. This is more revenue for the company than ad sales. So let's talk. And the beautiful thing, they walked in with a slide deck of what they wanted their show to be. And through some coaching and some back and forth conversation, we settled on we want to tell the stories of our consumer, of the end user of our product. We don't want to talk about our product. The brand is okay, but the products, no. And if a guest brings up a product, we're quickly going to steer them back onto story. Because if they have an end user telling story on their show, that reinforces the value of their brand, even though they're not talking about the product. So that's a great example of how we can develop what a show is going to be, what the intent is that they want to gain from their investment of time and money in producing a show.
And what sort of product did they have? Was it kind of a coaching
No, it was soft goods, bags. It was a company, and 511 is the company. They build equipment for police, fire, uniforms, range equipment, things of that nature.
Okay. Interesting.
And
'Cause
they're
in my mind, I was thinking coaching and their clients would have stories and that would fit, but that's really cool that it was not in that.
and and their guests, the stories that they were sharing. I mean, the company wanted to do a series for the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and they embarked on that, and our studio got to play a small role in one of the episodes because they couldn't make a video appearance. And when the towers fell, 3 people were pulled from the pile alive. 2 of them lived, and now we're interviewing one of them. And he's telling his story, and he's telling his story that he's been telling for 20 years. He's now a motivational speaker in that world. Perseverance and resilience. He was trapped for 36 hours, major crush injuries. But him telling his story on that show really shows the listener how much this company cares about its end users and the public. And on a side note, I'm getting ready to edit this audio, and I realized the first employee I ever hired was getting ready to learn audio editing. And I'm like, you know what? It's going to take 3 times as long, but this is the show because she learned about that day in a textbook in school, to where my age, I watched it on TV unfold in real time. And just the power of being able to have her touch that story, and that story is still available on all your favorite podcast players, is incredible.
How did you get into this world of podcasting and storytelling?
It's interesting. I always dabbled with HTML, web development, when it was becoming a thing. And it was a hobby, not a job. And I did it while I was doing other jobs. And I was injured and ended up going back to school and became a web developer. But back in the day, you transferred audio files from a computer to a mobile device, whether it be the Microsoft Zune or the Apple iPod back in the day. And I was just fascinated by this medium. And one of my web customers wanted to start a podcast. And it was 2008, the first show I produced. And podcasting was hard back then. We had to burn our own feeds. It wasn't as easy as it is today. But that was a side project from, maintaining their website. In 2014, one of my buddies came to me and said, hey, he was an instructor in a local community college. They were taking his class from in class to online. And he said, help me record my guest lectures so my students can continue to learn from their experience and their story. And I convinced him, if we're going to take the time to do this, let's create a podcast. And it was the first major production that I was involved in. I had 50% ownership in it. We produced that show for 4.5 years. It was monetized to the tune of over $60,000 a year for a 30-minute weekly episode, which was awesome. And then we ended up selling it to a consulting company in the South. So from conception to exit, what a journey over, 4.5 years period. That working on that show, people started calling me saying, hey, can you help me with my show? Can you help me with my show? In 2016, I left my full-time job and started podcasting full-time. And I shouldn't say podcasting, producing other people's podcasts. My projects have come and gone. I typically do short form, limited run shows, but it's been phenomenal. I mean, as an entrepreneur, loving what you do is great. You still have the struggles. You still have the emotional roller coasters. I once heard that entrepreneurs are the only people that'll work 80 hours a week to try to figure out how to work for. And yes, I work. And I loved what I did, but I'm like, this pace isn't realistic. So I had to set some goals. And on this entrepreneurial journey, goal number 1 was I need to work myself into a 5-day-a-week job. I'll still work 12 hours, 14 hours a day, but only 5 days a week from 7. And I was able to achieve that. And then I'm like, I would really like a 3-day weekend. Achieve that goal. I would really like a 4-day weekend sometimes. Achieve that goal. The first time I stepped away from the business was actually to go to a podcast convention, Podcast Evolutions here in LA.
Okay.
And I was going to be away from the business for 4 business days. And I was nervous and, calling the studio every once in a while, but everything was fine. And it seemed like I blinked my eye to where I wasn't as involved in the business anymore. My staff was handling customers, they were onboarding new customers. And I realized I don't really have anything to do today. What do I do? So that's when I started coaching content creators and mentoring content creators and helping them with their podcasting goals and objectives. But that was a weird experience from, financial struggles to find, what do I hate in my business? What do I hate doing? Every year I would evaluate tasks, responsibilities, and the number one pain point I would figure out, is there software, hard, or can I outsource this and just get it off of my plate? And in doing that, I kind of worked myself out of a job.
I love that though. You're like, I start a business so I can do exactly what I love doing and outsource the rest and have it be able to make the income that it can do that. That's
Absolutely.
amazing. And you were talking about, we were talking about how social media is one use for a podcast, but you were also talking about how it can create money for people. That's kind of a new concept for some. How do you make money by having a podcast?
So I'm not the conventional guy in the industry. When you talk to podcasters or companies in the podcasting space about generating revenue, it's a programmatic dynamic ad insertion. And coming from a sales background, with that show I discussed earlier, we were picking up the phone, we were cold calling, we were sending pitches, we did everything we could to sell the ads ourselves, because then we were able to keep 100% of the profit and not share it with whomever's supplying the programmatic ad and all of that. We had 100% control over who we advertised for, what the message was, whether it was baked in or we would dynamically insert it ourselves through our platform. And it worked out really well. And this is the crazy thing. You Google, how big does my show have to be? These platforms would like to see 1,000 to 10,000 downloads in the first 30 days of an episode's existence. And for 90% of the podcasters, that's unrealistic. For that show, and I still don't know how this happened. I had our first paying sponsor by episode 3. We had 36 total downloads. And I couldn't sell them an audience, so I sold them the vision of what we were going to grow this into. That company ended up hiring the host of the show to be a full-time employee for them. So in addition to his income, which obviously wasn't part of the show's, that show grew to webinar ad sponsor or sponsorships, episode sponsorships. We worked with great companies, great brands, but we had the ear of their end user. And that show got to the point to where FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, was calling us to say, hey, the director has a new initiative. Can we get time on your show? In the beginning, we were sending FEMA emails every other week asking for a director, and they would send a PIO. And eventually we had the last 5 sitting directors on that show, which was phenomenal. But it's persistence. It's putting a plan together. 2 things in podcasting. Number 1, you have to keep your audience forefront. You're creating this for your audience, and you need to protect them and nurture them. You cannot sell an ad for, a widget to an audience that isn't going to use that widget. So first and foremost, put content in front of your audience that they're going to value. Number 2 is talk to whomever is interested in advertising and let them know that, our audience is first, and yes, we can get into a deal with you, but we have final say over script. So we can convey their message in our manner to our audience. And if you protect your audience, good things will come, and then grow and foster that audience. That's what it boils down to. You've listened to podcasts to where ads come into play that you can tell were programmatic, but they have nothing to do with the show. It's that Casper mattress ad on a true crime podcast. it just doesn't fit. It doesn't work. Therefore, the advertiser doesn't get the click-through rate that they want, and they obviously it couldn't be their fault, so they blame somebody else. And just be picky, protect your audience.
And I like the go after the people that you want to advertise on your show.
Chase them. You know your audience best and find them. It's not hard to do. When I was in sales full time, we were commission only. We didn't sell, we didn't need. And LinkedIn became my best friend because I could find companies, find employees, work my way up to decision makers. And I wouldn't look for the buyer. I would look for the buyer's boss, because if I can sell him, he tells the buyer to buy it. Be strategic about it. Yes, you can check a box on your podcast hosting company for dynamic inserted ads, but does that serve your audience well? You need to then go through and vet categories and vet advertisers and all of that. And host read ads outperform, inserted corporate created ads day in and day out. And back to story, if you can work it into the episode, people don't even realize they're being advertised to, which is ideal. It's the old school 50s radio show host that did that wonderfully. Go back and listen to some of that tape. You'll be amazed at how well they advertised without advertising.
Interesting. Going forward, so there's a podcast that you're revamping. Tell us a bit about that and any other fun things that you're creating in the future.
Yeah, so I met a gentleman named Linz at a podcast conference in LA, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. Anyway, we kind of hit it off. It was the last day, the last hour of the show. We kind of hit it off and we remained friends, and we were texting and talking every once in a while. And he reached out to me one day and said, "Hey, I want to open a studio here in LA." So Q&A'd a lot of, what I failed at doing and what really worked for me. He was able to open his own production company, which was great. And we worked so well together, we started a show called Feed Drops. And it was very different than it is now, bringing it back. I would pick a podcast, he would pick a podcast, we'd play clips of the episode, we'd talk about the show. And one thing that really stuck with me, and I'll share an episode, I picked an episode, and I forget the name of the episode, but it had to do with the whole goth movement. And I very much considered myself, the tough guy. I wasn't goth. I wasn't painting my nails black or wearing all black. And listening to this show, honestly, partway through it, I went, I think I'm goth. And then towards the end, she's like, you might be right now asking yourself if you're goth or not. And I'm like, oh my, it just resonated with me. And it was a great story. But that's how the show was. Bringing it back now, we're actually rating and reviewing a podcast episode. So a podcaster like you or a fan of yours can submit your show, and we're listening to it with intent, and we're rating it over 10 categories: audio quality, clarity, post-production, editing. So we're quantifying our opinion of that production value and the value of the content to an audience. And we play little clips. Next episode, we're going to start playing little clips here and there, but nobody's doing it. And our intent is to help podcasters get better. And first and foremost, if you rank below 6.0 on a scale of 1 to 10, we're not going to we want to lift podcasters up and help podcasters get better. We're going to send you our report of your show with some key points of what you can do to improve upon your show. If it's 6.0 or greater, we're going to release our findings to the public. And they're short shows because it's just a review. We're not playing their episode in their entirety. So each episode's, under 10 minutes.
Okay.
But this also helps us identify our ideal customers who may want and need help with their podcast, so we can pitch them on our services. So it's obviously self-serving, but it's been a lot of fun. And we're discovering, have you ever heard of 20,000 Hertz?
No.
It is a podcast that I just finalized the script today. I'm going to be recording it later today. My goodness. If you want to hear a podcast that's doing it right, check out 20,000 Hertz. I've only listened to one episode so far, but I'm sure they're all phenomenal. And from sound design to content. It was just a great show. It's helping me identify some awesome content out there. So now, yet I have another show delivering me content on my favorite podcast player that I get to consume weekly.
And what sort of content? Just curious. What are they putting out?
They're kind of all over the place. The episode that I listened to was titled, I don't want to mistake it, so let me try to find it here. It was something Taylor, Dallas Taylor, the storyteller. The host's name was Dallas Taylor. He found 5 other people with the exact same name and interviewed them. 6
Hilarious.
Taylors on this episode. And he had a specialist with naming. I didn't even know that was a job. Come in and talk about the importance of a name. And he found some curious things. Every single Dallas Taylor that he met was creative. They were in a creative space. I mean, so many nuances were pulled out of these people telling their stories on this. It was check it out. 20,000 hertz is the show.
I definitely will. Advice for entrepreneurs looking to either start a podcast or get into podcast production.
Wow. This is where I'm going to probably upset some people. A lot of podcast production companies are great. What are we going to call it? What's the description? Let's go. They want to get you into a billing cycle. When somebody approaches me and wants to start a show, I ask them for their mission statement. What do you want this show to accomplish? And from that document, 9 times out of 10, we get into a values statement. What values are you going to uphold yourself to when creating this content and telling story? And everything that we do is with intent. We're not going to go into a recording session without what we want the intent to be. It doesn't always work out. Sometimes a guest will make a left turn when we wanted to steer them right. We're still going to run with it because we can find a lot of gold there for the audience. But plan. I have a show right now that I want to do. The mission statement's done, the value statement's done, the artwork is done. The first 100 episodes are outlined. And that's what I love to see from somebody who wants to be a podcast creator, because we can record episodes, we can put timeless episodes, evergreen episodes in the can. So when you fall ill, when you're nasally, when you have a cold and a cough, we still have a piece of content we can deliver to the audience, because like I said before, we need to protect them. We grew up watching Fonzie on Happy Days every Thursday at 7. And when he didn't come on, we were upset. And that's the same mentality. It's changing now with On Demand and Taylor Sheridan. Thank you for, long hiatuses in between shows. It's changing, but we need to deliver upon. And if you don't want to produce weekly, that's fine. State that in your mission statement. State that in your description. Let your audience know every other week you're going to get an episode. But be honest and transparent with them. But create that backlog so you're never in a rush. The worst episodes are, oh my gosh, I don't have anything to record today to release tomorrow. And you just, press record and start vomiting into the mic. And it's just a nightmare. It's a longer recording session or very short. It's crazy in post-production trying to make sense of all of this. And you're not delivering a piece of content that your audience deserves. Every episode should be a gift to your audience. So plan.
And do you usually work with people who are doing it on their own recording, or 2 people, or a guest? What's the happy place? What's your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, our mission statement is we're here to help you tell your story. Now, the more hosts, co-hosts, guests you have, it's going to cost you more to produce that piece of content because post-production is going to be longer. And, people are like, I want to do a 30-minute show and me and my 2 co-hosts are going to interview a guest. Well, let's divide 4 people by 30 minutes. It's not a lot of talk time. Plus intro, outro. What kind of substance can you pull out in that brief period of time interviewing somebody? So we kind of revamp or steer them to, or maybe remove a co-host and put them into a production role of some sort. As far as my happy place is a good story. When I'm eager to get, and I'll be honest, not every show is my cup of tea. it doesn't mean it's not somebody else's. So there are some shows where it's like, oh my gosh, I got to edit an episode today. And you take that deep breath, but you go to work, and on occasion you're surprised. This still resonated with me, even though it's not my ideal content. So our favorite people to work with are those that put the effort into telling a good story, whether it's my liking or not. And as far as I've worked with global brands to that solopreneur who did an episode, a short run on the health benefits of cacao. And again, it was her story she wanted to tell, so we helped tell it. Our biggest production was about 16 hours worth of work per 45-minute episode. That was our goal. And yes, that's an expensive show to produce. However, you can do it less expensively. You're not going to have all the bells and whistles in post-production that one might want. But again, we want to help you fulfill your vision for your content. And one thing a lot of people don't realize is every episode that we produce, my name's attached to it. Sitch Radio's attached to it. And we don't want to release subpar content. So we're invested in every episode being the best it can be.
I like that a lot. A question for me today, Brian. What you got?
You know what I have for you today? How many episodes, and this is leading question here. How many episodes have you produced so far?
23.
Very cool. You're doing a great job then, because most podcasts don't survive that long. What is the biggest unexpected pleasantry that you found from producing 22 episodes?
There's two answers to that. So there's a personal side. There's a getting more comfortable. There's a getting that it's no big deal, getting that it's just a conversation, and my job is to pull your wisdom and awesomeness out of you and let people see that. And for the me learning side, I get to go and talk with people who are kind of the experts of their field. And I'm asking questions partly for the audience, but partly because it's a surround yourself by people that you want to be like sort of scenario for me. I get to talk to people who are entrepreneurs who've created something that they're really proud and excited about, and learn about their journey. And it keeps reinforcing for me and hopefully the audience that it is a journey. None of these people start out where they are now. And I love that journey. And in those hard times, I create a blog for every single episode that I do. And sometimes just going back and reading those blogs, because ChatGPT takes quotes from the transcript. And in those blogs, just going back and getting recentered to like, okay, these are people. It's all very human and very real when you're talking to someone like this. And it's inspirational. And I get inspired by the people I get to talk to on a semi-regular basis.
Can I share something with you? I write a newsletter called Digital Brew for content creators. And one thing when I started that project is I opened up a Word document and I named it Digital Brew Archive. And every word that I've released is on that document, a single document. Episode title, date released, link to the original post, and then paste the copy, next episode or next issue, next issue, next issue. And I wasn't sure why. And then one day I went, I wonder what ChatGPT could tell me about my newsletter. And then a light bulb went off and I said, I can run gap analysis. What am I ignoring? What haven't I written about? And it gives you a list of things that you, within your genre, within your niche, that you haven't talked on. Well, is that a bias? I don't like that, so therefore I'm not talking about it. But it's important to creators, number one. Number two, you can take that list from that gap analysis and then bounce it off Google keywords. What's trending right now that's on this list that I haven't written about? So I can create real-time content, satisfying search, and growing my newsletter. It's been a great tool. And in addition to that, I use Notion.so. They have a freemium model. But I don't know, 5 years ago, I started a quotes database because I like quotes. If it resonates with me, it goes in my database. And then one day I learned, wow, I can import a CSV to Canva and it will batch create hundreds, however many quotes you have in your database, images for all of that for memes.
Hmm.
Wow. I mean, when you're creating document, keep record, keep a catalog, don't rely on any platform to be there tomorrow when you wake up. You need a Word document, an audio file, the video file, the originals, the project compilations, all the edits, all the assets in your computer, backed up to the cloud and backed up on an external hard drive that's not plugged into your computer. Keep all of that, because a piece of tech is going to come in the future to where it's gold and you're going to be able to do so much with it. I can't tell you how many creators I've come across who are like, yeah, I've, published 100 episodes. Great, let's see that. I don't have it. I deleted it. It's public now. I'm like, no, it's gold. It's gold. Going back, repurposing. I mean, there's so much you can do with it if you, A, pay for the storage, and B, keep record of everything you do. So, but that goes back to the planning. Just because this is a pen today doesn't mean it can't be something else tomorrow because of an add-on. So keep
That's so
record.
valuable. I like that a lot. Yeah, gotta get my hard drive going. All right. All right. Where can people find you, Brian?
The easiest place to find me is my first initial, Colburn, my last name.com, bcolburn.
Okay. Amazing. Well, I'm sure people will be heading your way. You've given us much wisdom, and I greatly appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak with your audience, whom I hope you're protecting and feeding awesome content to. And I appreciate being included in that. And keep crushing it, and don't hesitate. Reach out to me if you have any questions about podcasting. That's to your audience as well.
100%.
No worries. Thank you.